Happy generic time of the day, product people. Alan Neal here, again with another Drivecast for the PDM Show, at the PDM Show on Twitter and Facebook, pdm.show on the web. What I want to talk about on this Drivecast is a product lifecycle management approach that I've developed over a couple of years. Started out with an idea I got from both Saeed Khan and Alan Armstrong, so I'll let them fight over who originally coined this. But they both like to say, nail it before you scale it. And I've since expanded that over the last couple of years in my own mind and in my own work, to encompass the full life cycle. And I tried to come up with a kind of a memorable acronym to help me remember the different steps. So what I've come up with is the acronym GRINspec. So GRINspec. Grin because we're trying to delight customers, and I'll try to share in the post of this Drivecast, my Ready PDM logo, which is kind of like a smiley face. You might have seen that online. So we're trying to delight customers. We're trying to put a grin on their face, and I like grin too because it's not just smiling, but a grin is kind of like a somebody who's pleasantly surprised, somebody who's satisfied, somebody who's feeling content. So I really like grin. So that's the first part of the acronym, and then spec is the second part. And I like that because we are needing a spec, if you will, to drive our product, to drive our evolution. So it's kind of like a specification for how to manage the life cycle of your product. So let's go through it here, and I'll probably talk more on the PDM Show about this going forward on different episodes and share more information. But the G comes from in my acronym here. The G comes from GRAIL, G-R-A-I-L, and I'm a huge, as you guys might know, I'm a huge Joseph Campbell fan. One of Joseph's stories and legends that he would often quote the most is the Arthurian legends and the quest for the Grail. And basically what the Grail represents for us in terms of product management is, what is our burning goal, our burning passion, our audacious goal that we're trying to achieve. And it's really important that you have something very deep and very meaningful to you, because things are going to be very tough, and there'll be lots of trials, and there'll be lots of tribulations, and there'll be lots of times when you might be tempted to give up if the goal isn't strong enough for you. So that's what the Grail is. That's what the Grail is, and to use a kind of a Zen Buddhist expression, the Grail has to be a goal that you're seeking with the same passion as a person whose hair is on fire is seeking a pool of water. That's the kind of passion that we're talking about here. So what's your Grail? For example, I did a post recently where I said that Elon Musk was on my Mount Rushmore of product management, and that's one of the reasons why is I like the scale and scope of his goals. Going to Mars, getting us off fossil fuels. He's tackling really big humanity level goals. So what's your Grail? What's your passion? What is the thing that's going to keep your light burning in the darkest of hours as you're launching and managing your product? So that's the G, is Grail. The next one, the R, stands for risk fail. And what that means is very few of us will be like Mark Zuckerberg, where we come up with an idea or borrow an idea, depending on who you want to believe, for a product in our college dorm, and then basically ride that to success and fame and be set for life. Most people will have to fail and fail and fail and risk and risk and risk. And there are way many more stories in business and sports and any area of endeavor where people have had to risk and fail and risk and fail and risk and fail many times before they quote unquote made it. So the R in GRINspec stands for risk fail, and what that's all about is just be prepared that you're not going to hit a home run your first time up to bat. So you're going to have to risk and fail, and you best get used to that. And again, that's why it's important to have such a burning grail goal, so that you can power through all those failures you're going to have. So that's what the R stands for, risk fail. The I stands for in rail, and what I mean by that is when you in rail something, it's basically what you're doing is you're setting up a path. So the idea is, after you've risk failed enough and you've got enough insight about the problem that you're trying to solve, the market problem you're trying to solve, the ecosystem and customer you're trying to solve it for, then you want to in-rail that. In other words, you want to set that up as set up your product, your solution, on a set of rails that will deliver your value proposition. So you're going to want to really put some tight parameters on that, and we'll find out about how important that is going forward. But it's basically getting ourselves ready to scale, which comes later. So you want to in-rail it so that by the time your demand and your growth is really skyrocketing, that you've got a system in place, a set of rails. If you imagine a train on a set of railway tracks, that train couldn't go as fast as it does and be as long as it is, and all of those things, if it wasn't on rails. The rails allow it to achieve scale and speed, and that's what I'm talking about with the I for in rail. You want to create a set of rails for your product so that you can hit scale and speed, without the train coming off the tracks, so to speak. So that's the I, is in rail. Now we get to our concepts borrowed from Alan and Saeed, which is the N stands for nail. So you want to nail it, and what that means is, again, we're preparing for scale, but we don't want to scale the wrong solution. And a lot of companies make this mistake. They try to scale too soon, and they haven't nailed it. And for me, nailing it is you have to look at nailing it from a whole product perspective. So a lot of people might think of nailing it just in terms of the value proposition. I've risked and failed enough that I've got my insight correctly. I really calibrated in and tuned in to my customer's core problem and my customer's needs, and therefore my value proposition for solving those needs. That's only one piece of it. Now you need a system, and this is where we go back to the rails. Now you need a system for delivering consistently your solution to that problem. And I think a lot of times people don't think about that when they think about nailing it. They think about, I've got the insight, I know what the customer needs, but then you need to build an entire system of delivery, of solution delivery around that, to have a whole product. A whole product is not just the insight, it's not just the idea, it's not even just the piece that the user is going to use, but it's the entire system that you have, right from first customer contact to last customer contact, for how you're going to manage that, the delivery of that solution. So that's what the N stands for. The N stands for nail it. And again, many thanks to Alan Armstrong and Saeed Khan for inspiration on that. The S, same thing. We're borrowing this directly from Alan and Saeed, and that's scale it. So now let's review. So you've got your grail, you've got your burning passion, you've risk failed. That's the R, a ton, and that's giving you a lot of insight into your domain, your problem space. You've in-railed it, so you've built a system for yourself around how you're going to systematically solve this problem at scale for your target customers, and then you've nailed it in terms of not just the customer insight, but also the solution delivery. Now you're finally ready to scale it, and by scaling it, what we're basically doing is we're going to, you know, if you imagine, you know, in a movie, let's say, where you know, where the character, you know, let's say it's the Incredible Hulk or something, basically, you know, doubles, triples, quadruples in size. That's what we're talking about. So the idea here at scale is you're going to take the exact same structure, the rails, the systems that you've already got defined, and you're basically just going to increase the scale of them. That'll be by adding, you know, by adding bodies, by adding resources, by spending more. But at this stage, you don't want to be thinking about your systems and your delivery mechanisms. That should already be solved in the previous stages. You're literally just adding more resources to this. So I guess a better analogy than the Incredible Hulk would be, you know, the process of making bread. Imagine that what you're doing is, at this point of scaling, is you're basically adding yeast, which we can think of as investment, as more people. You're basically adding yeast to your bread, which is going to make it rise and increase in size. But that's the only ingredient you're adding. You're just adding more. So that's the S. That's scale it. And then the P. The P is for prevail it, and what that means is, now what you've got to do is you basically have to conquer and capture as much market space and as much mind share and as much geography and whatnot, you know, as you need to satisfy your Grail goal. So if I go back to Elon Musk, you know, he's not going to be, he's probably not going to be satisfied that he's prevailed until we're on Mars, you know, until we've colonized Mars, until we're completely off of fossil fuels, etc. So prevail means basically, now that you've got the scale, actually executing and seeing through the full scope of your ambition by prevailing in your chosen marketplace, in your chosen ecosystems. And then the E, again, I'm going to borrow this. I'm going to borrow this one from Saeed Khan and Alan Armstrong. And the E stands for extend and defend. So now what you've got is you've got a strong market position. You've prevailed in your target markets. Now you want to either extend by maybe expanding or extending your value proposition, you know, getting more share of wallet within your target customer base, looking at adjacent markets if you want to follow the bowling alley analogy from crossing the chasm. So you want to extend, but you definitely also need to defend, because now you're going to have a big target on your back. And again, to go back to the Elon Musk analogy, he's not the only guy trying to get us to space, and he's not the only guy trying to get us to Mars. I believe Amazon has a venture. I can't recall off the top of my head what it's called. I believe Richard Branson has Virgin Galactic. So once you're starting to succeed and prevail, then you've got a target on your back, and everybody wants to come and knock you off of the beam, as they say. So E stands for extend and defend. And then C, now we're at a crossroads here. Once you've extended and defended, now the C stands for what do you want to do? Do you want to curtail this? In other words, do you want to exit? Do you want to sell? Do you want to dismantle? Or do you want to regrail it? So the C stands for curtail or regrail. And what regrail means is, if you've prevailed and if you've achieved your vision, your original grail vision, then there's some depression that comes with that, right? Because the real fun has been fighting to achieve the dream, the goal, to get the grail. Now you've got the grail in hand. Now you're a little depressed, because what do we do now? Well, we can either extend that, so extend the boundaries of that grail, additional markets, additional customer types, adjacent, etc., or we can curtail it, or we can say, yeah, our job's done here, and we can plan some kind of an exit, and that exit could be cashing out by selling, it could be by dismantling and retiring. So that's the C. Do you want to curtail or regrail? That's kind of a fun little acronym that I'm throwing out there. So it's GRINspec. Grin because we want to delight and put a happy face on our customers, and spec, because we need a recipe, right? We need a specification. So hopefully that might be helpful to you in your product work. As I said, this is something that I will evolve over time and try to post more material on. This has been Alan Neal for the PDM Show, the PDM Show on Twitter and Facebook, pdm.show on the web, and I will talk to you on the next Drivecast. Take care.